UFC 273, Alexander Volkanovski versus the Korean Zombie Chan Sung Jung. Welcome to the prelim card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, and as usual, fight-by-fight breakdown and analysis from that betting perspective specifically. Here to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights you want to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button for this Boxing MMA Picks channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on the video. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this prelim card for this UFC 273 event, we have 8 fights. We're going to get right into it with fight number 1. Julio Arce taking on the newcomer Daniel Santos. For Julio Arce, he lost to Yadong Song back in November. It's a southpaw on the feet, decent stand-up, mixes it up pretty well, good movement, pretty light on his feet, fights from the outside as well. I think he has pretty decent combinations, decent striking speed, pretty good natural kickboxer, keeps the fight on the feet, yet he is able to be outstruck. He is somewhat timid in his stance at times, doesn't really throw enough strikes at times. So he's somebody who, although he wants to keep the fight on the feet, there are definitely some concerns that I have. For Daniel Santos, again, like I mentioned, UFC newcomer. He hasn't competed since December 2019 in general. That alone is going to put a lot of question marks on this fight from a betting perspective. But from the footage that I saw, I mean, albeit over 2 years old at this point, wasn't overly impressed. I mean, it looks like he likes to come forward, puts on a good pace, puts on good pressure. Looks like he lacks some technique in his punches. He's a bit wild, but he does put his combinations together pretty decently, primarily hands too, so mostly boxing, although he does have a few finishes via spinning kick, which I thought was pretty interesting. I will say avoid betting on this one completely. I think there's way too many question marks. On one hand, I definitely think Julio Arce is the better striker from what I've seen, the more pure striker from what I've seen. But on the other hand, I feel like Julio Arce has a problem with punchers who put the pressure on him. This match can be very Song versus Arce-esque. Not to say Daniel Santos is the same type of fighter as Song, but in that Daniel Santos will be the one that is pressuring forward. I think he can catch Arce with one potentially. I'm going to pick the newcomer. Just due to that sort of come forward, rush forward style that he has. I wouldn't be surprised if Arce outpoints him and wins the decision, but I think it's very possible that Daniel Santos can land one almost in the same way Yadong Song did. So starting the card with the newcomer, with the underdog, Daniel Santos is my pick.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. When I look at these odds, I think this is a closer fight than the odds say. When I look at Santos, this guy has when you look up fights on this guy, he has some K1 fights, some kickboxing, legit straightforward kickboxing fights. So he's in there. He's definitely a really good striker. And like Harris said, I agree that he goes on the front foot. He's an aggressive striker. He's going to be in Arce's face. He's going to want to push the pace against Arce. This is a fight that I really think is closer than the odds say. It's tough for me. I wouldn't put a bet on this fight. I'll let you know that because I think the dog has really good value here. He can come out here and really show out. This guy has one loss. Now, but when you look at Santos, the opponents he's fighting, you might see a 7-1 record or a 7-0 record. But when you look at those guys that are 7-0, like click on any one of those guys. Let's click on that guy. Okay, I actually think this guy was pretty good. Actually, no. Look who he's fighting. Look at the records. Oh, look at these records, right? No. Look at the other guy before that. It's actually this Asian fighter was actually pretty good when I was doing the studying. He was actually pretty good. But let's look at that. Look at this guy, Enrique Fantini, right? So look at the record. So he has say a 7-1 record before he fights our guy tonight, our guy that's fighting on Saturday. But before he fought this guy, he's fighting guys 0-1, 1-0, 0-0. Like So you can't. I gotta go with Julio Arce, but I do see the path where the underdog could win this fight. So I definitely see where Harris is going with this because the underdog he puts on a pressure. Arce does not like getting backed up. So this is kind of a stylistic matchup where Santos' style could disrupt Arce, but being the vet he is, he's fought the much better guys. I do see value in Santos again pulling off the upset. So Harris, good pick. I like your eye there. But I gotta go with Julio Arce for the channel. Again, if I'm gonna make a bet, it's probably a dog or pass. But yeah, Julio Arce, good boxing. He has the ground game, and he's been there. He's fought the better guys. He only loses to good guys, and yeah, he should get the win here. But again, this is a tough fight because Santos. There's a lot of questions here, and he has looked good. He has a striking. This is likely going to be a striking match, but Arce has that jiu-jitsu. So I like Arce having the more well-rounded game, and I think when it comes to the stand-up, I think his sharp boxing could be a factor. So I'm going to go Julio Arce, but be careful as far as betting goes.
Second fight, Piera Rodriguez taking on Kay Hansen. For Piera Rodriguez, making her UFC debut as well. She's an undefeated fighter. She competed on Dana White Contender Series and LFA in the past, most recently in October, so fairly active. She looks pretty comfortable on the feet, not really the highest pace, but she does pick her shots well, good constant pressure as well. Of her 7 wins, 5 of them are via KO TKO. So she has good power behind her, especially in the strawweight division. Looks like she can land that takedown as well. So it looks to be pretty well-rounded from that perspective. I think I saw some pretty decent takedown defense from her as well, if I'm not mistaken. 2-fight losing streak on the other side for Kay Hansen. She lost to Jasmine Jasudavicius in January, although that was up a weight class. So she is back down at strawweight on this one. Decent striking is the most I can say about her, albeit relatively basic. She likes to come forward and immediately look for her strength, which is in the ground game. She has a decent clinch. She has decent takedowns. She has some grappling as well, or at least some submission attempts. We see she lands or attempts 1 submission per fight per 15 minutes. Low activity fighters like Piera Rodriguez, they're a bit concerning from a betting perspective because it's hard to definitively score rounds in their favor. But overall, I think this is a really tough fight. In a lot of ways, I think it's going to come down to how good Rodriguez's takedown defense is. And in a lot of ways, I'm having a hard time trusting Kay Hansen's ability to take the fight to the ground. We see the numbers there, 1.77 takedowns per fight, which is not bad, but only 21%, 22% accuracy. Valid reasons to go with Rodriguez here. I mean, she is the favorite. I can definitely understand that from what I'm seeing. She looks to be the better of the 2 fighters on the feet, the more dangerous of the 2 fighters on the feet. But interestingly enough, I want to go with Kay Hansen on this one due to 2 main factors. First factor being Piera Rodriguez, she kind of stands in front of you. I think that's going to allow Hansen to shoot when she feels there's a good opportunity to land a takedown. And secondly, and most importantly, I think this is a must-win for Kay Hansen. You're looking at a fighter that, came into the UFC 6-3, had some momentum going on with her name as a young American fighter. She wins her first fight, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was her first fight that she won in the UFC. And then she go ahead and she loses 2 of them in a row. So now she's looking at potentially 3 UFC losses in a row. That's something that can get you cut. So she's potentially looking to save her job here. I think it's a must win for her. I think she's supposed to have a ground advantage in this one. And coming back down to strawweight, I think it's going to give her the opportunity to land the takedown. And like I said, Piera Rodriguez, not the most active fighter, doesn't really have the highest level of activity. So even rounds where Piera Rodriguez is winning, they could be potentially 50-50 rounds. So I'm looking for Kay Hansen to barely squeeze this one out. Could be a split decision type of fight. I'm definitely not interested in betting on this, but in making a pick, I kind of have to go with the must-win situation that Kay Hansen is in. And as a result, Kay Hansen will be my pick.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I like the fight they put together. The odds indicate this is a close fight. Piera Rodriguez. I watch every fight on Contender Series live the day it happened. So I'm well aware of this fighter. I remember her fight. She fought I believe a taller fighter, and yeah, there was at some point she looked good early on. Then at some point the opponent, I think she got at least a round in that fight, if I remember correctly. And then she had to kind of come on in the third round. She doesn't have the best cardio, so she doesn't have good grappling, but she does have good hands. She has good boxing for that division. She's going to be the better striker in this fight. But Kay Hansen, she's been around. This is Piera's first fight in the UFC, so we know how that goes a lot of times. Kay Hansen has that experience in the UFC. Her record's not the best, but again, a lot of those losses are from the UFC. And that Corey McKenna fight is arguable. She arguably won that fight. And I actually bet Corey McKenna thinking that I got lucky that night. But yeah, Kay Hansen has that wrestling advantage, has that complete jiu-jitsu advantage, grappling. She's a judokai, judo fighter is her base. I think this is a fight where, is it going to go Piera's way where she keeps it standing, or is Hansen going to be able to get takedowns? I actually think Hansen's going to get the takedowns. I actually think Hansen can kind of hold her own a bit in the striking exchanges. She's not going to win the exchanges, but I think she can hold her own a bit. And I think that when it comes to the grappling, she has a massive advantage here. Rodriguez is not good on the ground. I was looking at some fights she had, and that's not her strong suit, and that's Kay Hansen's game. So if Kay Hansen goes grappling, I think she can make this an easy 30-27 type of fight if she goes the grappling route. But it's a matter of if she wants to play striking half the round or strike for the whole round, or again, that's not going to play her well in this fight. Piera is a far better striker. But again, I think Kay Hansen has decent stand-up. I think she's improving each fight. It's not good stand-up, but I think it can hold her own to not look outclassed. But I think when it comes to the ground, I think the takedowns, I think Kay Hansen's going to be able to get those. And the fact that she needs to win these fights, I don't think she's going to look for excitement. I think she's just going to look to get her hand raised. So I'm going to go Kay Hansen to utilize that wrestling. I think she has a big advantage there, and to get a win here.
Taking a look at the third fight, we have Anthony Hernandez taking on Josh Fremd. Anthony Hernandez, it's been over a year since his last fight. He beat Rodolfo Vieira back in February 2021. Introduced as a striker, has decent hands, decent pop, decent combinations, decent in and out movement, puts the pressure on, almost blitzes forward at times. Definitely a high activity or a constant activity type of fighter. Only a BJJ blue belt, if I'm not mistaken, at least as of his last competition. I don't know if he's leveled up since in the 14 months that he's been off. Yet most of his wins are via submission. Most of the 8 professional wins that he has. You have to respect the knowledge that he has in these grappling situations, despite maybe not being as credentialed, should it get down there. Josh Fremd, on the other hand, he's making his UFC debut. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He last fought in February, so again, very active fighter, looking to make a return after a couple of months. Decent jab. He likes to come forward. He likes, looks like he picks his shots pretty well. Has decent timing as well. Bit more of a technical striker on the feet, though. The one thing that I notice is that there is a discrepancy in the activity level between these two. I can't definitively say one fighter is better than the other in terms of their striking, but what I can say is that Hernandez is a lot more active. And I think that activity can give Fremd some problems. I wouldn't really bet on this one at all. Again, especially with newcomers, I tend not to really feel those too much unless I'm really feeling the person on the other side of it. I'm not feeling Hernandez that much where I can confidently say he wins. But again, in making a pick, I am going to go with Anthony Hernandez. And I think the main thing here, again, will be his level of activity. I think there will be a huge discrepancy throughout the entirety of the fight. And Anthony Hernandez gets his hand raised with the crowd present, with activity, and gets it done in that way. So I'm going Anthony Hernandez.
Yeah, this is a tough one when you look at Josh Fremd. I've been following this guy on LFA. He's been main eventing a lot of these fights. He's not good, man. This guy, I think this is a bad matchup for his first fight in the UFC. I know he has the height advantage. I think he has that Hail Mary shot. Like if he lands, like he again, as you mentioned, he does have good timing. If he does land, he could win the fight. But um, I actually think Hernandez is probably better everywhere in this fight. Again, he pushes that pace, and as the fight goes on, his cardio gets so much better. Yeah, Josh Friend, he's fought a lot of scrubs, man. He doesn't have really any good wins on his record. And the time he stepped up against RoboCop, was it? He got knocked out cold in LFA. What's his name again? The guy that big guy with Gregory Rodriguez, RoboCop. He knocked him out cold. He shouldn't have been in the ring with that guy. But yeah, so when you look at these guys, the records are similar, but you gotta look at Hernandez has fought the far better guys. And I think he was a champion as well in LFA. So he has the same credentials as Josh Fremd. But yeah, I like Anthony Hernandez to win the fight. He's better everywhere. He should get this to the mat. I think Josh's weakness is the ground game, and I think that's where Anthony can kind of dictate the fight. So I'm going to go Anthony Hernandez. Utilize some grappling, if not even some striking against the cage, holding him against the cage, or just open floor. I just think he's better everywhere. So I like Anthony to get this done.
Fourth fight is Aleksei Oleinik versus Jared Vanderaa. Aleksei Oleinik, I mean, 44-year-old fighter. He's on a 3-fight losing streak at this point. Got to think he's on his way out. Pretty small for the division. He usually weighs in between 225 to 235. Awkward in the stand-up, kind of just walks forward, very willing to brawl. Has some pop in his punches. He does telegraph it, though. He can put some combinations together with decent accuracy. But ultimately, he's going to try to punch his way into a clinch. A lot of grappling accolades. Of course, when he was a really good grappler, 48 of his 59 wins are via submission. And he does land 2 takedowns per fight with 46% accuracy, but I don't necessarily think he's the best wrestler. I don't think he's necessarily good at bringing the fight to the ground. Vanderaa, on the other hand, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Split decision loss to Andrei Arlovsky in February. He looks pretty improved as a striker, although he's still a bit slow, still a bit sturdy, still can be hit. He definitely has a chin, and he has that toughness factor to him. And like I said, he has looked improved as a striker. He looks a little bit better with his movement. Continues to come forward, continues to stalk him down. The striking looks improved with a better jab, somewhat regular usage of the calf kick, improved as a counter striker as well. And I've seen him go for the takedown. I would say, don't fret too much at the takedown numbers. It's not a strong aspect of his game, but I have seen him go for it. And if not the actual takedown itself, I have seen him make it dirty against the cage if and when needed. I can potentially see him doing that in this fight, although both fighters are on losing streaks. I feel like this is a more of a desperate situation for Jared Vanderaa as the 29-year-old fighter on a losing streak looking to continue his career, as opposed to the 44-year-old fighter on a losing streak who might be on his way out at this point. Vanderaa took this fight on short notice, so that could speak to his confidence in maybe liking this matchup here. I am expecting Vanderaa to be the much stronger fighter of the two. He's gonna weigh in at that 265 maximum. Aleksei Oleinik, I mean, he's probably gonna come in at 230, 235. And if he's heavier than that, it's probably worse of a sign for him in terms of the shape that he's in. I also expect Vanderaa to be better on the feet and could potentially, knock Oleinik out in this one. I also expect, again, I have to reiterate, the weight and the strength difference to protect Vanderaa for the most part from any kind of fluky submission landed from Oleinik. So I'm looking at this fight as a pick'em, but I'm looking at it for many reasons as being more advantageous for Jared Vanderaa. Of course, he can get submitted. Oleinik has a bunch of those to his name, but a 44-year-old fighter versus a fighter in his athletic prime, both of them on losing streaks. I'm thinking the fighter in his athletic prime who's going to outweigh his opponent by 35 to 40 pounds with better striking is just in a better position to win. So I'm going Jared Vanderaa for this one. I think he can pull it off, and it wouldn't be surprising if he gets a knockout.
Yeah, this is at this point in time, this is a low level when it comes to skills here, man. Oleinik's almost 45. But again, if he gets this fight to the mat, he could cause a lot of problems. But if he doesn't get that submission, how's the rest of the fight gonna go? Or if Vanderaa gets back to his feet. This is a hard fight to call because Vanderaa is not good either. That's pretty much what it comes down to. He's not a good fighter, but in this fight, he has the striking advantage, but he has no striking defense, so he can get hit as well. And if he gets taken down, it's not going to look good for Vanderaa. So for me, this is a pass as far as betting goes. Like I wouldn't bet this fight, but I'm going to go with the younger guy. I think that age matters. Again, this guy is almost 45. If Vanderaa is going to be 25, 30, 40 pounds heavier fight night after they hydrate back. And I think where Oleinik is going to win is with the takedowns, and he's going to have to be taking down a much bigger guy. So it's going to be hard, especially after the first round. If Vanderaa survives that first round, I can see him winning the next 2 rounds with his striking. Just keeping Oleinik at a distance. So I'm going to go Vanderaa. Tough fight, younger fighter though. But again, I would avoid betting this fight. Both of these guys are low level at this point, and anything can really happen on Saturday.
5th fight, we have Mickey Gall versus Mike Malott. Mickey Gall lost to Alex Morono in December. Despite his improvements, still looks uncomfortable and pretty inexperienced on the feet. He's going to fight from the outside. He's going to mix in the calf kick. He'll mix in some straights, some jabs, decent right straight. His strength definitely is in his ground game, though. And to that point, he only lands 1 takedown per fight. He only lands at that 27% accuracy. He lands almost 2 submissions per fight. So that's going to tell you he's much more of a grappler or much more of a sort of Hail Mary submission than he is somebody who can effectively bring the fight to the ground as a wrestler. He just can't get you down to actually impose his strength. So a lot of times you're going to see him keeping the fight on the feet unless you make a mistake. Going up against Mike Malott. Mike Malott is a UFC newcomer on a 3-fight win streak. He competed in Dana White Contender Series back in August. In watching a few of his fights, I was pretty impressed at his submission ability in his own right. Seems to be a bit vulnerable on the feet, not spectacular by any means. Bit hittable, a bit slow. The striking defense really isn't the best. But he has moments. He throws a lot of fakes, has decent timing, and definitely has some moments on the feet. I think the newcomer has a shot here, and it's kind of interesting to see him as big of a favorite as he is, because I do think the odds don't necessarily respect how close this fight can be. I think these fighters in some ways have very similar styles in that they're not great on the feet, but they do have a number of submission victories to their name. I haven't seen anything to suggest that Mickey Gall really has any advantages in this fight outside of UFC experience, which of course we know is very valuable. Otherwise, I think Malott maybe has the slightly better striking here. I think their grappling can maybe cancel each other out for the most part. I anticipate a very close fight, a tough fight on the scorecards, perhaps a split decision type of fight. But again, if I'm just kind of checking boxes here and I kind of cancel out or rule out the submission game of each of them, and I look at Malott as having the slightly better striking, then that tells me to lean in favor of Mike Malott. I will say be careful again with betting on this one. I would not suggest betting on it. I think Malott is way too steep of a favorite. These are the types of matchups that Mickey Gall ends up winning, where he busts a few parlays. So be very careful with actually betting on this. But again, slightly better striking, just as good with submissions. That means I'm going to go with Mike Malott.
Yeah, this is one of those fights they got to be careful with because, as Harris indicated, Both of these guys are not the best guys here. Like, they're not the best guys, but they are similar fighters. They both are grapplers first. Malott has good grappling. We know that his opponent has grappling as well. But again, it could come down to the striking. But what I think it's going to come down to is the cardio, and I think that's going to be the factor. I think that's why Malott is such a favorite in this fight. I'm not a fan. I'll be honest. I'm not a fan of Mickey Gall. He has horrible cardio as well, and that could be the reason why the odds are the way they are. There's not a lot of indication that Mike Malott can go the 3 rounds, but I've watched fights with this guy. He doesn't indicate to me that he's slowing down at any point in his fights. It ain't his fault that he finishes his fights in the second or the late first round, right? So it's a tough one, but I can't roll with Mickey Gall. I have to go with Mike Malott here. I just think he's going to be the stronger guy physically. I think that could be a factor as well, and having the better cardio, if he has the better cardio. And again, as Harris indicated, Harris thinks he has the better striking, and I echo that. Mickey Gall's bad, man. Like, he's good against guys that have no clue about the grappling, but fighting guys that have an idea with the grappling, his striking doesn't win the fights, right? So, but I'm gonna go with Mike Malott. I'm gonna go with the newcomer to get it done.
Fight number 6, Aspen Ladd versus Raquel Pennington. Aspen Ladd lost a unanimous decision to Norma Dumont back in October. She puts a lot into her strikes on the feet. She's more of a boxer. In the stand-up, all hands, very little kicks, some head movement. She is a bit of a brawler. She'll definitely take one to give one, definitely willing to engage. She'll continue coming forward. And she has the ability to land a takedown. We see a takedown and a half per fight, almost 50% accuracy, good top pressure, aggressive ground and pound. So she definitely has some decent tools to her name. Raquel Pennington beat Macy Chiasson back in December. She extended her winning streak to 3 at this point. Look for her to control the center of the octagon. It's actually going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out, because I feel that's what both fighters want to do. She probably most closely identifies as a boxer as well. On the feet, primarily hands in her own right. She does have a good long jab, a decent striking defense to go along with it. And she's physically strong, especially when she gets you against the cage. She has a pretty effective Thai clinch. She lands a takedown per fight of her own. So she can really mix it up and really make it dirty with some dirty boxing, with some clinching. And again, like I said, eventually bringing the fight to the ground, as she does once per fight. Aspen Ladd's last fight was really interesting. She wasn't really able to make adjustments. She was outstruck. She didn't let her hands go. It was very uninspiring. You have to think that she's going to be looking to put on a better performance. And she's a fighter that could benefit from a crowd being present. Aspen Ladd, in a lot of ways, is kind of like just a younger version of Raquel Pennington. 2 fighters with pretty similar strengths. But I am going to bank on Raquel Pennington's IQ here. I think she can make the better adjustments on the feet. I feel like she matches Aspen Ladd's toughness. And she's been finding a way to win fights lately. Again, with that IQ, with just even looking better and cleaner in the stand-up in comparison to Aspen Ladd. Similar strengths. Pennington is older, yes, but I also think that makes her wiser. And I don't think she's old enough where age would play a factor. So I am going to go with Raquel Pennington here. Again, better striking IQ. She just looked better recently as well. And she's been finding a way to win fights. And I think she finds a way to get this one done as well. I don't think Aspen Ladd presents any unique challenges for her. So I'm going Raquel Pennington.
Yeah, I got Raquel Pennington as well. Aspen Ladd needs to get this to the mat, but Raquel is game. She only loses to good fighters, man. Look who she's lost to, right? So Pennington's not my favorite fighter, but you got to respect her game, right? She only loses to really good fighters. Top 3 in the rankings, those are the fighters she loses to, right? So I think this spot, I think she can keep it on the feet. Aspen Ladd needs to get it to the mat, and you've seen the improvements in Pennington's last fight. the way she was boxing Chiesa. She looked good. She looked good in that fight. So I like Pennington to get it done, and her experience is going to be big. Keeping on the feet, and I think she's the much better striker. Easy win, Raquel Pennington.
Fight number 7, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Marcin Tybura. Rozenstruik lost to Curtis Blades back in September. Patient in the stand-up, more of a point fighter, pure kickboxer in some ways. Almost has that underrated type of power. You know, he hurts guys with jabs. He hurts guys with short hooks, with short straights. Definitely has, or appears to have, that kind of, you know, touch of God type of power where he's knocking guys out while barely throwing it. Doesn't really need to wind up a wide punch to hurt you. He likes to keep it on the feet. You know, even after fighting Curtis Blades, where he was taken down 3 times, you still look at his takedown defense numbers. It still sits at 75%. That tells you overall he's pretty good at defending them. And Curtis Blades takes everyone down. So, you know, you can't fault him too much for that. Not really the most active striker, you know, pretty good technical striker, has fast hands, good quick strikes, good quick counters as well. Taking on Marcin Tybura, lost a unanimous decision to Alexander Volkov in October. Good boxing, especially in close quarters, good movement for the division, good counter puncher, especially with his jab. He's also going to use his kicks pretty effectively, good steady pace about him where he's constantly looking to score points without exerting a large amount of energy. Good striking defense. He stays pretty calm. He can box in both stances. And, you know, don't forget he has a ground game in his own right. You know, a takedown and a half per fight. Yes, only 33% accuracy, but he has that layer to his game. And that's probably going to be the most important layer in terms of what actually plays out in this fight. For Jairzinho, he was able to keep a lot of that Curtis Blades fight on the feet. His takedown defense was relatively good throughout that fight. Again, he was taken down 3 times, and he was able to get back up without taking too much damage until that 3rd takedown in the final round that led to 3 minutes of ground control for Curtis Blades. That tells me that he might not have too much of an issue with Marcin Tybura's attempts. The analysis of this fight to me is pretty similar to the analysis for the Tybura versus Volkov fight. You know, Volkov had been taken down several times by Curtis Blades, but Volkov in general had pretty good takedown defense. And as a result, Marcin Tybura could not emulate that. That fight stayed on the feet. And as a result, Marcin Tybura got beat on the feet. I can say very much the same thing for this Jairzinho fight. I think although Curtis Blades was able to take Jairzinho down, I think his Jairzinho's takedown defense will be good enough to stop Tybura from emulating that. And as this fight stays on the feet, I think Jairzinho is going to have the better opportunities, the opportunity to potentially clip Marcin Tybura and, you know, win the fight on the feet. So I'm going to go with Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I'm anticipating a fight that stays on the feet, and I'm simply going to go with the better kickboxer in that situation. And that better kickboxer is Jairzinho Rozenstruik.
Yeah, I'll be straight and quick in this fight. I think Tybura can upset. If he implements that wrestling, I think he can get us to the mat. And Rozenstruik's out of his element there, right? He, as good as he is kickboxing on his back, he's useless there, right? So I think this is a fight that Tybura is definitely a super live underdog. And I think that's something that people should consider. But for the sake of the channel, I got to make a pick. And again, I'm not putting a bet on this fight because one guy is much better in the striking. One guy's much better in the grappling. So it's going to be a matter of who gets their fight, and that's who's going to win the fight. Rozenstruik has shown pretty decent takedown defense. Not the best, but Tybura does not have the best takedown defense. But he could get the fight to the mat if Rozenstruik lets Tybura lay on him against the cage. And from there, he can get that takedown, right? So, again, this is a tough fight. But I'm going to go with Rozenstruik to stay on the feet here. Because, again, even if Tybura gets it to the mat, I think Rozenstruik might be able to survive that. And I think as the fight goes on, takedowns will be really, really hard. And if Rozenstruik survives that first round, I don't see Tybura taking him down later in the fight. And at that point, I think Tybura is in some problems. So I'm going to go Rozenstruik here to get it done. But I could also see Rozenstruik just knocking him out in the first round. So either way, Rozenstruik's my pick, but Tybura has a lot of value.
Let's move on to the final fight of the prelims. In that case, we have Ian Garry taking on Darian Weeks. Ian Garry beat Jordan Williams in his November debut. Looks to have pretty quick hands, looks to have a pretty decent movement, good long jab. Fights off that back foot a bit more of a stick and move type of style. He has sharp combinations, good punch IQ as well. And of course, with that stick and move type of style, it's going to make you a good counterpuncher. Has good pop as well. We see his record there 8-0. Of those 8 wins, 5 of them are via KO TKO. And I mean, he showed a decent takedown defense in his debut, also showed decent clinch work. I don't think those will necessarily be factors in this fight. Taking on Darian Weeks, who lost his debut to Brian Barberena back in December. Looks to be a pretty diverse striker. He has that Muay Thai stance. I'm going to see a lot of push kicks from him. He's going to stand right in front of you for the most part. Not much lateral movement out of him. He wants to fight from the center of the octagon. He's not the most active striker either. Takes a bit more of that counterpuncher role in his own right. And again, I've seen good takedown IQ from him. Wouldn't really call him an overwhelming wrestler, but I have seen good takedown IQ. So in fact, that decent takedown defense I mentioned from Ian Garry, I guess we are going to see that, or potentially see that tested in this fight. I think what I learned from Ian Garry's debut is that if you give him pressure and activity, it can give him a tough time. But what I learned from Darian Weeks' debut is that he's not really that type of fighter. He doesn't have that style that puts the constant pressure and the constant activity on you. And as a result, I think Ian Garry's movement and speed could potentially be too much here. I think he is more of a dynamic striker, and I think that's going to be enough for him in order to pull out the victory. Very steep favorite here at -360. I wish it was a little closer because Ian Garry, I don't think is that guy yet to be having these borderline -400s. But in terms of just picking between these two fighters, I do have to go with Ian Garry. Out of 10 times, I'm probably going to go with Ian Garry at least 8 times in this fight. So yeah, I'm going to Ian Garry on this one. I think he pulls it out.
Yeah, this is hard, man. Ian Garry, man, like that guy almost gave me a heart attack in his previous fight versus Jordan Williams. He was getting pieced up, and his striking defense needs work. His awareness needs work. He was getting landed on early in that fight, and I thought he was gonna lose that fight. Yeah, he got the knockout later in the fight, but until that knockout, he was losing that fight. And Weeks is, I think, a tougher fighter than Jordan Williams. Weeks has a wrestling background. He can get this fight to the mat, and he has power. Like, he's not the best striker, but he can just swing one of those wild hooks, and if it lands, Ian Garry's in trouble because Ian Garry doesn't have the best defensive striking. But Ian Garry does have. He's a well-rounded fighter. He has grappling. He has wrestling. He's going to be the better striker in this fight. So when you really factor in all the details of the fight, plus he's going to be the bigger guy come fight night, you got to think Ian Garry's going to win the fight here. He might lose the first round, but as the fight goes on, or even later in the first round, I see Ian Garry using his size, his striking advantage, and just winning a fight here. He could get a knockout, but he could get a decision. But I see Ian Garry picking it up as the fight goes on. So I'm going to go Ian Garry here to get the win. But Weeks, there's underdog value there. But I think Ian Garry, I think he could be the real deal. And I think he gets it done.
All right, let's take a look at some of the betting lines in that case. Going to take a look at this prelim card, of course, starting with an underdog pick. Who are you taking a look at as maybe the best underdog that has a shot at winning?
All right, who do we got? Who's the underdogs for this card?
We have Daniel Santos, we have Hansen, we have Josh Fremd, we have Jared Vanderaa, we have Mickey Gall, Aspen Lad, Marcin Tybura, and Darian Weeks.
All right, let's go with Jared Vanderaa.
All right, so we see him there at even money, more or less. $100 is gonna get you a $94 profit. $250 will get you a $235 profit. So pretty much even money there as an underdog. In terms of the underdog, I feel has the best shot at winning. I'm taking a look at Kay Hansen. Again, I think she's in a must-win situation for herself. $100 would return 106. $250 or would profit, I should say, 106. $250 would profit 265. And taking a look at some parlay action, which fights are you taking a look at here?
All right, parlay wise, I like Ian Garry.
Okay.
Like man, this is tough. Let's go Ian Garry, Raquel Pennington. And oh, this one's tough. Anthony Hernandez.
All right, so that would be 3 fights there. Ian Garry, Raquel Pennington, Anthony Hernandez. That would be a plus 183, meaning that $100 would profit $182 and $250 would profit $457. Mine would look very similar, except I would drop the Anthony Hernandez fight and I would just stick with the 2. I would stick with Raquel Pennington and I would stick with Ian Garry. That's almost going to be a double up there. So $100 would profit $91 and $250 would profit $228. So we are going to officially sign off on that note. This has been the prelim card prediction video for this UFC 273 Aleksei Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie event. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. How do you feel about our picks? How do you feel about our underdogs, our favorites? Is there a specific parlay that you're looking at? Let's have all of that conversation in the comments. We want to hear from you. But officially signing off, of course, we are Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's do it.